and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of Paul Brown Show. Taping live at 2 Expose You Studio. I have Mr. Darrell Goodman, he's the founder, Mr. Ray Harvey, chief engineer. My guest this evening, Miss Marilyn Sanders Brown. She is the author of Reflection of Life. How you doing there, Miss Brown?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
My name is Marilyn Sanders Brown. I'm a native Charlestonian. I grew up on James Island, attended what was then Fort Johnson High School, graduated, joined the military, did 8 years in the United States Army, married, 4 children, 5 grandchildren, worked for the Al Cannon Detention Center for 17 years, took an early retirement after getting hurt on the job, and I started writing. And my first book is Reflections of Life.
Okay, we're going to go through all the different areas of your life, but first of all, Reflection of Life. Why did you select this as a title of your book?
After getting hurt, I had a lot of time to sit at home, and I started really watching the news and what was going on in the world, and I started writing about what I saw, and boy, did I see a lot. That's a lot.
What did you, as far as, some of the things, what would you consider to be one of the first things that you've seen that you basically...
The Dylan Roof trial, the Manual 9 shooting. I was actually still working at the jail when Dylan Roof was arrested, and I had very little interaction with him, but the interaction that I did have, it was scary. He showed no remorse, and I just started wondering, how could someone so young be so full of such hate and evilness? And I got hurt shortly thereafter. I was on workers' comp for almost 2 years, and then I took an early retirement. So once I retired, I started really watching the news, and they were going through, I believe it was the trial, when they were apologizing to him and he wouldn't even look at them. And I was sitting down one day and I asked myself, why does Satan hate us so? Why is the world so evil? And the answers started coming to me. So I sat down and I wrote a poem titled Satan and Man. And after that, it was Reflections of Life. Just about any topic that's on the news today, I have a poem for it.
I know there's a place called Centenary Charleston Family that you have. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's the church I attend, Centenary United Methodist Church. It's at 60 Wentworth Street, downtown Charleston. Reverend Lorenzo Moses is the pastor. And we have a small congregation, so they're like family. And anything that you do, they really throw themselves behind you and they support you. And that's what they did with me. I was a Women's Day speaker there. I think it was in 2016. And I spoke about the number of women being incarcerated in jail, with most of them having drug addictions and also being mothers. And I spoke about it and I wrote a poem about it. And it's called Can I Rise? And they really support me. Good congregation, good preaching. You should visit. It's really nice.
How did it feel like being in front of that first live audience telling them, telling that poem?
It wasn't good. I was really nervous. I'm not a public speaker. I've never, I dealt with a lot of people at the jail on my job. And, we do briefings in the morning where you stand up and you speak once I made sergeant. Same thing with the military, but I had never addressed a large crowd and just, coming off the top of my head. And it was the first poem that I recited publicly. But after I saw how they accepted me and that they were really interested in what I was saying and the applause that I got, it made it a whole lot easier.
Now, I know before you writing this book right here, we want to talk about your family. Mm-hmm. How would it feel like the support of your family writing this book?
It felt very well because most of the time I bounce things off of my sons and my daughter, first. What do you guys think about this? Do you get what I'm talking about? Should I go public with it? And I've always, my mom, my sisters, my brothers, sisters-in-laws, everybody, they're like, you should go public, you should publish. So I finally published. I have this collection of poems right here. It started, I would say, over 3 years ago. I started writing some of these poems 3 years ago, and they're still relevant as to what's going on in America today. My Brother's Keeper is a poem about a young man getting shot by the police, and I wrote that before George Floyd, before Arbery, and it's still relevant today. The exact same thing is still going on.
When you look at all the circumstances that's going in our today's society, how would you describe that to your children?
It's hard. My children are grown, so they know, but my grandchildren, it's just so hard when they ask you, well, why did the police shoot the guy, Nana? Why did this happen, Nana? Because, we teach them to be law-abiding citizens. We teach them wrong from right. And when you teach them the right thing and then they see the wrong thing, it's just so hard to get them to understand. My granddaughter, Ariel, she's 7 now. When she was about 5, she was in kindergarten, and we would teach her, to be nice and not bully people and tell somebody when somebody bullies you. And she's watching Trump on the news, and she comes up to me one day and she says, Nana, Trump's a bully. President Trump is a bully. What can you say? He is. So all you can do is tell them the truth. I feel like if they're old enough to ask, they're old enough to be told the truth. We just try to tell them in a way where it doesn't frighten them.
2020, this has been a real different year from the other years that we have faced in our life. How would you write a poem about this year?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't written a poem about this year per se. I have a poem titled The Making of America, and it talks about slavery right from the beginning right on up. I have a poem about Donald Trump. I have a poem about the shootings. But this year here, I would have to start with, tell me what you see. Tell me what you're hearing. Are you listening? Are you really knowing what the signs of the times are? Because I feel that not only should we be looking at what's going on as far as race relationships, we need to look at the bigger picture. We really need to look at the bigger picture. I don't think God is too pleased with us. And to be honest with you, I don't think we're going back to normal. I think this is the new norm, and we're just going to have to deal with it as it comes. It may not get any better. It really may not.
What advice would you give those people that's watching us who want to write a book? What type of advice would you give them?
Do it. If you really have something that you want to say, do it. It's therapeutic. And even if you don't do it for profit, if you don't ever publish it per se, write it for yourself. I started writing not to write a book, but more or less as therapy, because when I was working at the jail, we work 12.25-hour days. Sometimes you would work 3 or 4 days straight before you would get a day off. And I was just busy. And then after I got hurt, I found myself like, okay, what am I going to do today? Go to physical therapy, come back home. What else is there to do? So I started, after I caught up on things I've been wanting to do and didn't have the time to do and got all my little projects and stuff done, I found myself with a lot of time on my hands. And writing was therapeutic for me. It was only supposed to be for me to start off with. It wasn't ever supposed to be for a book, but that's what it turned into. And I really feel the majority of my poems, I really feel that God gave them to me. Especially, I have one that's titled All of Humanity. And I was sleeping one night, just sleeping, not thinking about anything when I went to bed, anything. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up. And these verses was just coming to me. And it's from the viewpoint of a tree where people were hung. And I got up and I couldn't write it down fast enough. I was hoping I could remember everything, and I started writing. And then when I got up the next morning, I started reading what I wrote, and I was like, oh my God, I got to put this together. I got to, publish this one. And that's what I did.
Reflections of life.
Yes.
The new release, and that is #1 in African poetry. is ranked #1
Yes.
in African poetry.
New releases.
New releases.
Yes.
Okay. How does that make you feel?
Awesome. I didn't expect that. I didn't know that it would happen that quickly. But once my daughter really put it out there on Facebook and told her friends about it, and I told my friends about it, family already knew, people really, really responded. You know, we have a generation now that they want to get out here. They want to see change. I think my daughter's generation, the generation behind us, she'll be 30 in October. I'm sorry, Brianna. But this generation is really becoming woke, as they say, because we have a generation that never saw roots. We have a generation that felt like, oh, we don't need to know about slavery. That's in the past. We can go to any school we want to now. We can do this. We can do that. But now that things are being recorded and it's on camera, they're seeing what we were trying to tell them the whole time. You need to sit down and watch Roots. You need to know your history. You need to understand that you may have the same job and even have been there longer, have more experience, more schooling, but your counterpart is making more than you just because they're white and you're black. You need to know that you may have been passed over for that promotion by somebody who isn't quite as deserving as you are because they're white. You need to understand that when you go to buy a home, they're only going to take you to certain neighborhoods where they want you to live. They're not, even if you can afford to live in the more exclusive neighborhoods, they don't want you there. You need to know all of this stuff. You need to know that there's a difference between an arrest made for a black youth and an arrest made for a white youth. For example, I've heard policemen say out of their own mouths that if it's 3 or more black males in a car, they're going to stop them, even if they didn't do anything wrong, because they said that more than likely one of them has a warrant, it's drugs in the car, or one of them owes child support. That's how they think, and that's how they treat you. If a young black man is stopped by a policeman, and he has his hair cut low off, he has nice dreads, and the officer stops him and he says, hey officer, why did you stop me out? What did I do wrong? The interaction may go pretty well, but if you are a young black male, you have dreads, you have gold teeth in your mouth, and an officer stops you and you say, hey dog, what you stopped me for? You're getting out the car, you're getting pat search, if you keep talking to them like that, you're more than likely you're gonna be arrested. And that's just the way it is here, in my experience, in Charleston, South Carolina.
So why is it so aware that we know that we are sometimes being stereotyped, especially our youth in our community?
Look at what's going on. They better know. I mean, it's sad. I saw it on Facebook the other day. A lady was saying the 5 things you need to know when a cop stops you. And I'm saying to myself, why do we have to know anything? I mean, of course, you know to pull over, but why should you have to be told what to do after that? The officer walks up to you, he should say, good afternoon, can I see your license or registration? Whatever it is that first interaction is. And you should comply. But there's nothing written that says you have to address an officer by, yes, officer. And, this isn't slavery. You don't have to say yes master and all this stuff, yes officer, and give it all, just yes. But like I said, if you address them dog or this and that, they're like, I'm officer, and you say officer so and so. Where is that written? Why should you have to do that? Of course you're not going to curse them out and disrespect them, but I feel like as long as they're telling you what they need you to do and you're complying with those orders, you shouldn't be stereotyped because of the way you talk, the way you look, or their preconceived notions. If you're the type of officer that you're afraid of black males and you already have that preconceived idea of who they are, you shouldn't be a policeman. You need to be in another line of work. It's as simple as that. And it's funny because I've watched black officers interact with white youth, and they'll walk up to them and they'll just talk, just like they're talking to any other human being. But when a white officer approaches a group of black males, it's like he's already expecting trouble. His hand's already on his weapon, and he's already in that, fight or flight mode. And I don't understand where it came from and why it's that way.
Do you feel like once they get in that the white officer, when he it's in that black community that there's that fear when he gets in that area. So he's already frightened when he's in there.
Yes, I really do feel that way. And the only officers, the white officers that don't react that way are the ones that grew up with black people, or they're used to being around black people, or they're accepting of black people. You see it all the time. You know, the cool white police officer, as we call them, and you know, they hang out and they treat everybody the same. They're people. But I feel like when you look at officers that they say they come from a white neighborhood, they're policing in a white neighborhood, they don't have that much interaction with black people, period. They already are in that fight or flight mode for whatever the situation is. And it's sad because it can be something as simple as you're speeding, or you have a warrant for bad checks or something like that. But you're going to approach this person like he's a murderer, like he has a warrant for, you know, he's out for murder or something. And why? Why? Look at Dylan Roof. They arrested him. They took him to get a meal. And this guy here is walking away trying to get in his car, and you grab him by his T-shirt and shoots him in the back. What academy, police academy, do they teach that type of training? It's awful. It really is.
It's, you know, this seems to be kind of like a thing whereas they shoot the blacks first and then they use they have a alibi as far as we're using ourselves as a means of protection, or where we I don't know. It's kind of weird, you know. I guess we thank God that we have these cameras now, because
Yes.
they've been doing this for years, and only because of these cameras that are actually taking these things that we're being able to see them, it makes these things come to light.
Correct. I feel that way also. I feel like, I don't know what it is where, you know, you're dealing with a black person and you automatically fear so much. But we saw George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin. We saw Ahmaud Arbery minding his business. What gives citizens the right to think, well, I'm going to stop this guy and I'm going to have a weapon and he has to listen to me and he has to do what I want him to do? And then you shoot the person and you said, well, I wasn't fair in my life. How do you think they feel? How would you feel if you're jogging in a neighborhood and you stop to look at construction on a new home? You're admiring the home. Maybe you would like to build a home like that one day. And these two people you don't know just pull up and try to detain you, and they have weapons. Why is it wrong for him to be in fear of his life and try to protect himself, and then you're going to say you're in fear of your life and that's why you went after him with a gun? And it's the same thing with the police. You're the police. How come if you're that fearful, you're on the wrong line of work? And it's almost like they do what they do and then they blame the victim. Now, not only is the victim guilty before he's been proven guilty, now even though you have the camera footage, you got to speak for the victim, because 9 times out of 10, the victim isn't even here anymore. It's crazy.
You know, Marilyn, when we talk about the reflection of life, your book.
Yes.
In everyone's life, there's a time when they want to give up. Describe that time in life, if there ever was a time in life when Marilyn wanted to give up.
If you read the book, you can tell, for me to write like I do, I had to have been through some things. There's a poem towards the end of the book, and it's called Marching On. And I think for me, it was when I went through my divorce. My ex-husband and I had been married for 18 years. We were both dual military. We had the 4 children total. And when I was in the military, you know, we were both advancing. We were making rank. Life was so fast-paced and so hectic that I think we sort of lost touch with one another. And then after I got out, I was so busy taking care of the children and then being an Army wife, going wherever he went, having to find a new job, making new friends. And, you know, life was just hectic and fast-paced. And then he retired in 1999, and we came back here. And we realized, I think, that we almost were strangers. We had lost connection on a lot of things. And I really feel that if we had put in as much effort and into our marriage as we did into our careers, maybe, you know, we could have salvaged it. But that didn't happen. And I ended up being a single mom trying to raise 3 black men. And that, oh my God, what a challenge. And of course, my one daughter. But, you know, you persevere, you find your strengths. That's when you really know how strong you are and how strong your faith is. My sister likes to say, God is all you need. You know, you think you need this and you think that, but if you have God, you have all that you need. And when you go down on your knees in prayer and you have faith, it works for you, you know, and you pull yourself through. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You continue to march on, and you'll be surprised where it leads. It led me to writing this book. So all I have to say to you guys out there, if you're struggling, keep struggling. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep going. Don't give up. Just keep going. It'll work out. As long as you don't give up, it'll work.
I know you spent some time in the military. What advice would you give individuals who feel like they don't want to go in the military? What good advice would you give about going into the military?
Personally, I feel that every female and male, when they graduate high school, they should do at least 2 years in the military. That was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It builds character, it builds self-esteem, self-confidence. You get to travel, you get to meet people from other walks of life, and you get to really realize that the world is a whole lot bigger than Charleston, South Carolina. It's the best experience I ever had. The place, I wouldn't give it up for anything. I've been to Germany twice. I visited Italy, Czechoslovakia, Poland. We were stationed in Kentucky, Texas. I'm not going to say too much about Fort Hood, but that's where I decided to get out at. And, you know, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. Yes.
Now, we're going to talk about Fort Hood. What about Fort Hood that you don't like about Fort Hood?
Ooh, Fort Hood.
They trained you out there at Fort Hood, huh?
Yes. We did 3 years in Germany. And then we got stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, and it was a shock. It was like, okay, I knew I was in the military, but I didn't know that every 2 weeks I'm gonna be in the field, I'm gonna be here, It's almost like you didn't even have time to unpack from coming to the field before you were packing up to go back again. They soldier there. They really, really do.
Okay, Marilyn, what person do you want to be 5 years from now?
Good question. I want to be the person that's still having open conversations, that's sparking conversations. I want to be the person that doesn't shy away from adversity. I want to be the person that my granddaughters can look up to and say, I want to be like my Nana when I grow up. You know, I want to be out there in the forefront. That's what I want to do, and that's what I intend to do. I intend to keep talking as long as I can talk, writing as long as I can write, set an example, and just being the best Marilyn that I can be.
How do you want your poetry to make others feel?
You know, if anything that I've written makes you stop and think, then I've done my job. I wrote it, Reflections of Life, because it's what's going on in the world today. And I want people to read it and say, you know, I never thought about it like that. I never looked at it from this viewpoint. Man, she's spot on with this. And then after all of that, now what can we do about it? How are we going to change it? And it's just not for black people. A matter of fact, I wish some white people would read it. Because do you remember that movie, A Time to Kill? Where Samuel L. Jackson is the guy, and a group of white guys had raped his daughter. And the jury was all white, and I believe it was in Mississippi. And they was giving that lawyer the time of his life. He was like, I'm defeated, I'm not going to win this trial. And then at the end, he painted the picture, and he said, now imagine if she was white. It's the same thing. If you're a white mother, and your child leaves out to go buy some Skittles and a Coke or whatever, and because he's wearing a hoodie and somebody think he's not supposed to be in that neighborhood, he gets killed, how would you feel? Stop looking at it as a black issue and look at it as a human issue. If that was your white son trying to get away and he went to get in his car and a black officer or any officer grabbed him and shot him in the back, how would you feel? I want people to think, open up your minds, think outside of the box, and then tell me what you would do.
If money wasn't an issue, what would you do with your time?
Travel. I want to go everywhere I can possibly go, not just overseas, but even in the States. I just want to travel. I want to go to the mountains. I want to go to Africa. I want to go to Alaska. I don't necessarily want to take a cruise, but I just want to go. I want to go travel and see every wonderful works that God has made. Every place.
I know you worked in the detention center. What did you learn by working in that area?
I learned a lot. A lot of people, when I tell them that I worked for 17 years at the jail or detention center, whichever you want to call it, they're like, "Oh my God, how did you do that?" And people have preconceived notions or ideas of what people who are incarcerated are. But I actually met some of the best people in jail. And I'm not talking about the officers, I'm talking about the inmates. If you really take your time and you do your job and you treat people as humans and treat people how you want to be treated, you'll find out that a lot of people, background and story are similar to yours. It's just that whereas you may have made a decision that helped you along in life, they made a decision that set them back. And everybody in jail is not in there for horrific crimes. I've met people who were in there for bad checks, forgery, animal at large, walking the wrong way on the highway, riding a bicycle without a warning device. Now, I think they've stopped incarcerating people in the misdemeanors now. I think a lot of these things they give you a ticket for. But if they give you a ticket, say your dog got out and it's $1,000 ticket, animal at large, because you've got 2 or 3 warnings. If you can't pay that $1,000 ticket, you'll get 30 days in jail. Now, they may take off like 10 days for good behavior, but that's what you get. And I just sat down and I spoke with a lot of people and realized that a lot of people came up differently than I did. A lot of people made choices that they didn't think would land them where they were. And I met a lot of women in jail, mothers, mainly because of giving up in life and turning to drugs. And it's a horrible situation because if mom's in jail, dad's absent, and mom's on drugs, who's taking care of the children? And then the longer I stayed at the jail, the women that I met, I started meeting their children. Their sons and daughters started coming to jail. I've met children that's 14 and 15 years old. And I'm talking to them and I'm like, why do you keep coming back here? Get your life together. You can go in the military. You can do this and that. And they would say to me, Brown, it's hard in the streets. I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have food. I don't eat regularly. Here I can come to jail and I got my own bed. I eat 3 times a day. Really? I mean, this is the state of America now where children rather be in jail than living their lives on the street and in a home, going to the prom, going to school. But I've met a lot of kids that they feel safer and they're more secure and they have more things in jail than they have on the streets.
Marilyn, did it ever cross your mind that when you was working at the detention center that you were one bad decision away from being where those people were at, locked up?
Maybe not then, but I look back at my youth and some of the things that I did, especially when we first joined the military, and I was like, wow, there for the grace of God, go me on mine. I remember when we used to, party in the military and you drink a little bit and you jump in your car and you went home. You didn't think a second about getting a DUI or, driving while intoxicated, which my group, we never, got like just totally wasted. But we drove and we drank and drove. And you know, you look at it now, and there's so many people that have lost their lives to that, and you just think, God, you know, thank you for protecting me. What if that had been me? You know, how would I feel if I killed somebody accidentally because I drank too much and got behind the wheel of a car? You know, it's awful, but you really have to take accountability and think about what you're doing, especially young people. Yes.
We're running short on time, Marilyn. If someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, I have my Facebook account. It's Marilyn Sanders Brown. I'm on Facebook. I'm getting ready to set up an Instagram. And we're going to be doing some, I'm hoping in the future, we're going to be doing some Zoom, putting it together, talking about some of the poems in the book. And yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show and telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your book, and look forward to seeing you some more.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, audience, for watching the show, and you be encouraged. Thank you.